Okay, so get this. We've got news sources about a retired archbishop in Nigeria. Vanished for like almost a month, and now he's back. But the whole thing, it's just shrouded in mystery, ready to unpack it.
Let's dive in. It really is, sometimes those stories with the most shadows are the most intriguing.
Right. So we're talking about Archbishop Godwin Okpala. And on December 7th, 2024, he and his driver were on their way to a funeral in Anambra State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's in southeastern Nigeria. They were going to a community called Umuchu, but they never made it.
And what's really interesting to me here is that this wasn't like front page news immediately. There seems to have been a delay in even reporting that they were missing.
Yeah, that is strange.
Which, that just raises all sorts of questions about how these situations are handled, especially in maybe more remote areas.
It's like a puzzle piece that's like, doesn't quite fit,
Mm.
You'd expect this kind of news to travel fast.
Exactly. Makes you wonder if there were initial attempts to just kind of keep things quiet, maybe hoping for a quick resolution, behind the scenes or something.
Hmm. And during all of this, the Bishop of Nui Diocese, so that's the region where the Archbishop was headed, publicly asked for prayers for their safe return.
That's a significant move. It shows how deeply the community felt this loss and really, turning to their faith for strength and hope.
Yeah. And then on January 2nd, 2025, Archbishop Okpala just announces his own release on Facebook. Just a simple, praise the Lord.
Oh.
Why do you think he chose that platform?
It is a really interesting choice, right? In this world of press releases and official statements, he goes for something so immediate and personal. It's almost like he's speaking directly to the people who are praying for him, sharing that, moment of relief and gratitude.
Right, and he definitely caught people's attention. But the news sources we have are pretty tight-lipped about how it all went down. They do confirm the driver was released too. But no word on any ransom demands or really any details from the police at all.
That silence that itself is telling, isn't it? Because usually, with a kidnapping for ransom, which is a very serious problem in Nigeria, there's usually at least some information about, like, the exchange or the demands, even if it's carefully worded.
Right.
So this quietness could suggest a very deliberate strategy to either protect those involved or maybe even control the narrative around what happened.
Especially because we know Archbishop Okpala is 75 years old. Being held captive for that long, it must have been a grueling ordeal.
Absolutely. The physical and psychological toll, you can't overstate it. It raises concerns about his well-being even now that he's back.
Yeah. And you see this wave of relief and celebration from the Anglican community, not just in Nigeria, but worldwide.
Wow.
It's almost like a mirror to those initial prayers. Like It shows this power of collective faith when you're in a crisis.
You're right. It speaks to the strength that people find in a shared belief, especially when they're facing really difficult times. They come together, they lean on their faith, they offer support.
And one source even called his release, get this, a heartfelt New Year's gift for Anambra State. What do you make of that?
It's very deliberate wording. It's like they're trying to frame this as a positive thing, emphasizing the joy of his return, this sense of a fresh start. But it also makes you think, like, who is giving this gift and at what cost?
Right. It adds another layer to the mystery.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll be exploring further in our deep dive. We've got this timeline, right, of the Archbishop's disappearance and then his release. But it's like we're still putting together this puzzle and, like, we're missing pieces.
Yeah. It's true. The known facts, they really do raise more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And some of those questions, they go right to the heart of what even happened here.
Exactly. Like, how was he released? Was there any ransom? The news sources, they just kind of dance around those details.
It's a curious omission, right? Because typically in cases like this, kidnapping cases, you usually get at least some information about the exchange or the demands, even if it's really carefully worded.
Yeah.
And this silence, it could point to a really sensitive situation, maybe one that goes, beyond just your typical criminal act.
Right. And if you kind of connect this to the bigger picture of Nigeria's, socio-political landscape,
right,
it does make you wonder if there's more to this story than we know right now.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. Nigeria faces these complex security challenges, right? From religious tensions to just basic economic disparities. And we can't ignore those factors when we're looking at an event like this.
And if it wasn't just about money, why was Archbishop Okpala targeted?
That's where all the speculation starts, right?
Yeah.
was it random, or was he specifically chosen for some reason? And his position in the church, that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Yeah.
Could this be about internal church politics? Or even, broader power struggles in the region? It's hard to say.
Yeah, one article even suggested that his release was this heartfelt New Year's gift for Ann Arbor State.
Right, right.
But a gift from who? And what does that even mean? What does that imply in this context?
It's a really loaded phrase, almost too poetic for like a standard criminal exchange or something. It feels like someone's trying to shape the narrative, maybe to appease the public, but, also maybe obscuring the truth.
Yeah, it almost feels like orchestrated, like they're trying to control how this whole story plays out.
It's certainly a possibility. And this brings us to another big question. What about the police? I mean, what role did they even play in all this? The fact that they haven't said anything officially is pretty noticeable.
Yeah, it's weird. Makes you worry about transparency,
Yeah.
Accountability. Are they even investigating? Are they being pressured to stay quiet?
I mean, their silence says a lot. It erodes the public trust, and it really raises questions about whether anyone will ever be held accountable for what happened.
And if they aren't, what does that mean for the state of security and justice in Nigeria?
It paints a concerning picture. It suggests that there are people, powerful people or groups that can basically operate however they want, and there are no consequences.
Yeah.
And that has implications not just for Ann Arbor State, but for the whole country.
So we have this whole web of unanswered questions. The delayed reporting, how he was released. Nobody's really clear on that. What were the motives? Why was he taken in the first place? And the authorities just being silent. It's a lot. I think it's important we've gotten so deep into all the specifics of this case to sort of zoom out and ask, like, what can we even learn from all this? From what Archbishop Okpala went through?
What stands out to you the most?
I mean, one thing that's really clear is the power of faith in community, especially in times of crisis. You saw how people rallied around him, prayed for him to come back,
Right.
and then just all that relief and joy when he was released.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't just about one man's experience. It really became like a shared experience for a whole community.
Yeah.
And their faith, their support. I mean, it was remarkable.
Makes you think about how important, faith communities are to society. And I don't just mean like the spiritual stuff.
Yeah, right.
They provide this sense of belonging, the support network, and they're a platform for, taking action together.
Yeah.
And in this case, that translated into a powerful force for hope,
Yeah.
for resilience.
Yeah. But it also reminds us of just how many challenges Nigeria faces.
Yeah.
I mean, kidnapping for ransom, especially in certain areas, it's terrifyingly real.
It's a complex issue.
With these deep roots, poverty, inequality, lack of opportunity. I mean, all of that can just create the perfect conditions for this kind of criminal activity. And then on top of that, you have the political instability, the corruption. And it's difficult to even address the problem.
And that's what makes this whole thing even more unsettling. The authorities won't tell us anything, It makes you wonder about accountability, Can they even get justice?
Yeah, exactly. Whoever did this, if they're not brought to justice, it just sends this message that these things can happen and nothing will be done about it.
Right.
It undermines the rule of law. It makes people afraid.
One source called Archbishop Okpala's release a New Year's gift for Ann Arbor State. I mean, yeah, it's hopeful, but it raises these uncomfortable questions, like what had to happen to get him back.
Right. It makes you think about what compromises might have been made, who ultimately paid the price, right, for this so-called gift. And it just highlights how fragile things are over there. The peace, the security in a place that's dealing with such huge problems.
So if we're kind of stepping back now, thinking about, our listener, what does all this mean for them? Why should they care about this story? It happened in Nigeria, far away for a lot of people.
Because at its core, this is a story about humans, about how strong we can be, about faith, about fighting for justice in a world where it feels like those things are always under attack. It's a reminder that these issues, they matter no matter where you live. They affect all of us.
It also challenges us to not just take the headlines at face value, to really dig deeper, to ask questions about the stories we're being told, to try and understand complicated things.
And maybe most importantly, it asks us to think, what can we do, even if we're, thousands of miles away, to try and make the world a place where peace and justice, they're not just, fleeting gifts, where they're a given for everyone?
It's a question worth thinking about. We've uncovered a lot, but some answers are still out there.
Yeah.
I hope this deep dive has made you want to explore more, keep asking questions, keep trying to understand, this complicated world we live in.